Picture this: Calgary's stunning riverside, warm sunshine, and a lifestyle that almost feels perfect. With endless outdoor activities, a thriving economy, and breathtaking mountain views, it's easy to see why so many people move here.
Commuter chaos as snow conditions.
Calgary's extreme temperature is making it difficult.
Snowiest February 21st in more than 60 years.
But what if I told you, for some, moving here has been their biggest regret? 6 months of relentless winter, blinding storms, and icy winds that make you question every decision you've ever made. Winter isn't just cold. It's isolating, exhausting, and hard to escape. This is just one of the reasons people regret moving to Calgary. Stick around to uncover the rest. You might be surprised by what makes people second guess their decision. But the biggest regret I see is that 94.2% of you right now are not subscribed to the channel. I know, it's kind of crazy. So give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. First off is Calgary's real estate market. Because honestly, this is the biggest one that often catches people off guard. Calgary used to be a place where you could actually go afford a home, especially if you were coming from higher priced cities like Vancouver or Toronto. The allure was clear. You have more space, more land, and at prices way lower than what you pay in those other cities. But here's the reality check. Lately, prices have been rising faster than expected. I've talked to a lot of people who moved there thinking they could snag a property for a great price, only just to find out that the market is way more competitive now. The price increases have been quick, and it's becoming harder for first-time homebuyers or people looking to upgrade just to find that dream home without spending a lot more money than they anticipated. And if you're eyeing up those suburbs, just keep in mind that the variety of home designs is somewhat limited, and don't even get me started on the parking. Like any city that's growing fast, parking just becomes an issue. Parking has become such a headache that it can make you second guess the location. And if you're renting, though the market may not be as fierce as Toronto or Vancouver, but it's still more competitive than you think. And while Calgary used to be a haven for those affordable rentals, that's changing too. You may not be facing bidding wars for apartments, but finding a good place in a desirable neighborhood can still be challenging. One thing to keep in mind is that rent prices often increase when leases are up for renewal, and tenants there don't have as much protection as those provinces like Ontario or BC. If you're moving there expecting a stress-free rental process, you might want to do a little bit more research just to make sure that you're ready for the current market conditions. Now the big one: Calgary's weather, which is something that you really do need to brace for. If you've heard people talk about Calgary before, you've probably heard them say, "Don't like the weather? Well, wait 5 minutes." And that's no exaggeration. It can literally go from -30°C one day to +15°C the next day, which can throw anybody off if you're not used to it. And the winters, they can be brutal. If you've never experienced a real Canadian winter before, Calgary's gonna teach you quickly what it's all about. We're talking about deep cold snaps that can dip from -30°C and even lower. The snow's light, so it's easy to shovel, but the temperatures and the wind chill are a completely different story. And let's not forget about the snowstorms that can just pop up out of nowhere and make driving a real challenge. But the thing that really gets people is how even the summer, the nights can be freezing cold. It's that type of weather where one minute you're enjoying the warm, sunny day, but as soon as the sun goes down, you're really wishing you had brought your jacket. And if you're not ready for it, those cold nights can really throw you off. It's definitely not the kind of place where you can just pack a t-shirt and some shorts and call it a day. All right, let's talk about something a lot of people overlook when moving to Calgary, and that's finding a job. Calgary has been labeled a booming city many times, but it's booming in specific industries: oil and gas, trades. The demand is huge, and if you're in one of those fields, you pretty much can guarantee a job. But here's the catch: if you're in a completely different field, especially something like arts, education, or even tech, it can be a lot harder to break into. I've heard the stories from newcomers who thought they could just walk into and get a job right away, only really just to find themselves waiting a couple months for that opportunity. Some people had to adjust their expectations and take on work that just wasn't their first choice, just to keep afloat until something in their field opened up. It's a reality check that hits a lot of people hard when they do first move here. So if you're thinking of moving to Calgary and you're in one of those niche fields that just are a little bit more specific, it's just essential to come prepared and just expect a longer job search. You might need to be a little bit more flexible and patient and just be ready to adjust to the market here. Or better yet, just make sure you have a job lined up before making a move here, right? It's just It's kind of a no-brainer. This next one's a biggie, especially if you're moving with your family, because a lot of people that are moving to Alberta, Calgary, is that leaving your home province means leaving your family and supportive networks behind. And for many, they just don't factor that in because it's a lot harder than expected. Because when you're in a new city, building that support network from scratch is tough. You won't have those parents that are just down the street or at least in the same city to help out with babysitting, or just having your close friends for a last-minute chat when you need it. For young families, this can feel especially isolating. Calgary's a great city, but if you just don't know anyone, it can take a long time to find your groove. Even if you do meet some people, it can feel like you're starting from zero, which we've all been there. There are a lot of people in this city who have deep-rooted social networks. And even though Calgary is known for having friendly people, it can still be tough just to connect on that level. And if you're used to having family around to help out with things like after-school pickups or just last-minute errands, Calgary's distance from your home base, from your family and your friends can leave you feeling really overwhelmed. Let's talk about the pace of life. Calgary just has a much slower, laid-back vibe when you compare it to places like Vancouver or Toronto. And that can be a huge adjustment for some people who are coming from the hustle and bustle of those cities. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air for some, but for others, it can feel like things are just moving at a snail's pace. There's not much of a nightlife scene there. Unless you're just into quieter, more intimate hangouts, you might find yourself missing the late-night cafes, the bars, and the clubs that you'll find in those bigger cities. Though the food scene is improving, but let's be honest, it's still not on the level of Vancouver or Toronto. While there are plenty of outdoor activities just to keep you busy, if you're used to constant social events, concerts, or just vibrant downtown, Calgary can just feel a little So if you thrive on excitement and fast-paced environments, you might find yourself wishing for more. So before moving, really ask yourself, do you enjoy a quieter lifestyle, or are you someone who craves that constant buzz of activity? Now let's talk about the politics and culture of Calgary. You probably know this already because you're thinking of moving there, is that Alberta is a very conservative province, and it's something that you need to be aware of. If you come from a more liberal area or just background, you might notice some stark differences in just the values and the priorities of people around you. People in Calgary tend to value their personal space, and they don't love to be dragged into the political debates or confrontations. It's just part of the culture there. Most people aren't as vocal about their political views, and you might find yourself a little more disconnected if your views don't align with the more conservative majority. But by no means does it mean that people are unfriendly. They're just more private when it comes to these certain topics. And if you're someone who enjoys just getting into the deep political debates or cultural discussions, you may find it frustrating to navigate these subtle differences in attitudes here. Just something to keep in mind. Now, if Calgary doesn't sound like a perfect fit, you might be thinking about moving to Vancouver, BC instead. But before you make that move, there are some big regrets people are having there as well. So click on this video here where I talk about the top reasons people regret moving to Vancouver, British Columbia. And while you do that, I'm gonna go fly some drones.